Became a father figure to my ex's sister after she lost her parents, but her words pushed me to gracefully exit their lives forever. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and about 8 years ago, when I was just starting out in my 20s, I began dating the woman who would become my ex. She's now 27. We split up 4 years ago after she cheated on me. She said I seemed emotionally checked out, but even though I do carry some resentment over that betrayal, I always respected her commitment to her younger sister, SC. When my ex and I first got together, her parents had recently died, and she was awarded custody of her little sister, who was only 8 at the time. From the outset, I could tell she was dedicated to giving S the best possible life, so when we'd have dates, they usually happened at her place. She couldn't exactly leave S home alone. Our dates turned into dinner and movie nights in, with S often joining in. I never minded. In fact, S and I would hang out even after my ex crashed for the night, and once S was tucked into bed, my ex and I got our own alone time. Over the 4 years we dated, S became more like a little sister to me. I started sharing in the household responsibilities. I helped pay for things, drove S where she needed to go, cheered her on at events, whether or not my ex was there, and did my best to fill a positive role in her life. Of course, my ex handled all the discipline. My job was giving S a stern talking to if needed, but my influence didn't stretch past that. Still, S and I got incredibly close, almost as if I really was her older brother. When my ex and I broke up, I had to have a tough conversation with her. I told her I wanted to keep being there for S, even if things were over between us. She took a few days to think it over before agreeing, but with one major condition: I couldn't just come and go from their house at will anymore. We agreed it was best to stay civil for S's sake, but we did sit her down. She was 12 at the time, and I explained that her sister and I had realized we weren't a good romantic fit. I stuck to the truth, if not the whole story, and told her we both felt it was the right decision. Watching her cry during that talk broke my heart. She was scared I'd vanish from her life. But after I reassured her and kept up my usual visits that week, she seemed to relax. That arrangement lasted another 4 years. S is now 16. About a month ago, she showed up for her ride to school in a completely new look. Since I was the one taking her in the mornings, I saw the whole outfit up close. It was, honestly, pretty provocative. She'd gone for the nerdy, e-girl vibe that's popular lately, but added her own twist: a lot of skin, super thirst trappy. I wanted to make sure she understood the attention that look might bring. High school boys are, well, teenage boys, and I wasn't sure if that was the image she wanted to project. I asked her if that was really the outfit she wanted. She said yes. I pressed her a bit, asking if she realized what kind of attention it might attract. I wasn't angry, though I'm sure my expression looked worried. As we went back and forth, she got more and more frustrated, until finally she exploded, telling me I wasn't her dad, wasn't even her brother, and she didn't know why I stuck around. According to her, I had no business being involved in their lives anymore. That honestly stung. But I just said okay, and drove her to school. My natural style has always been straightforward and blunt. S picked that up from me over the years. That outburst felt like her real, unfiltered feelings finally surfacing. Maybe it was just in the moment, but given how direct we've both always been, and her icy attitude in the days and weeks after, I took it as the truth. I took her words to heart. I knew I couldn't suddenly cut things off while she still needed rides and support, but I started making plans to exit her life gracefully. I talked things out with my ex. She said the decision was mine. As long as S's needs were still covered, she'd support whatever I chose. Over the past few weeks, I got things in order. S had recently earned her driver's license, but they only had one car, so I bought her a used, reliable Toyota. It's nearly 20 years old, but in good shape. I transferred ownership directly to my ex so S wouldn't feel weird or indebted, and since my ex was handling all the insurance anyway. My ex gifted S the car just last week. She told me S was over the moon. Up to that point, every car ride with S was awkward. I'd try small talk, but she shut me down, so I stuck to short hellos, goodbyes, and nothing more. Now, thankfully, she doesn't have to deal with me chauffeuring her around anymore. With S's biggest need met, I sat down and wrote her a letter. Not exactly my style, but I wanted to explain myself and have some closure. I told her I was sorry for how I handled the conversation about her outfit, and for anything else she felt I'd done wrong. I said I was glad her sister could keep caring for her even after I was gone, and that I genuinely wished her the best. She deserved it. Now the only thing left for me is to find work in my field and move forward. Update 1. Things have completely turned around since everything blew up. After I mailed that letter, S got it the next day, and suddenly my phone lit up with call after call from her. To my surprise, and against everything I feared, she did not want me out of her life. Nothing of the sort. It was honestly hard to make out what she was saying at first, her voice shaking between sobs as she apologized over and over for her words. I kept telling her that I truly didn't think she needed to apologize at all, but that's all she wanted to do. I suggested that maybe we could talk things through in person, and she agreed. So I drove over to their place, walked inside, and held her for what felt like forever. I just told her it was all okay, that I wasn't going anywhere, not now or ever. I made sure to explain how I felt about what she'd worn that day. I stressed that it was her decision, her body, her call, and that I had overstepped. I apologized sincerely for making her feel attacked. She shook her head and told me my apology wasn't even necessary. She said she just got irrationally angry and lashed out because it felt like I was criticizing her. I told her, and meant it, that I thought she looked beautiful, but I just worried her clothes wouldn't be appropriate for school, where she'd have to deal with a bunch of hormonal teenage guys. That seemed to make her feel better, and from there our conversation drifted to lighter things, like what my next steps in life would be. Honestly, I'm relieved with how it all turned out. If there was a silver lining, it's that the whole situation gave me the push I needed to look for a better job. I'm keeping my search local for now and talking to a bunch of people, but honestly, I feel hopeful. Looking back on it, I realize I had been pretty clueless about how teens rebel, or really anything about teenage phases. I'm extremely introverted, definitely not great socially, although I wouldn't say I'm on the spectrum like some seem to assume. I only ever had one real friend, my childhood neighbor. The only reason I was ever in a relationship to begin with is because she asked me, not the other way around. After years of being around S, she's the sister of my ex, but that didn't make her presence in my life any less important. For 8 years, we connected almost daily, spent hours together, and grew genuinely close. Some people say I never had an obligation to her, but I can't imagine not feeling responsible or compassionate towards someone I essentially watched grow up. Maybe I'm socially slow, but think about it, after all that shared history, how could I just walk away the second things got rough? That clothing argument, the spark for everything, tore open a lot of opinions. Some people seemed to think I was an absolute monster, while others got where I was coming from but felt I handled it poorly. One comment really stuck with me, a mother mentioning how she analogized clothing choices for her daughter, comparing at-home clothes with dressing for a fancy restaurant. That would have explained myself so much better than what I rattled off in the moment. Yeah, I should have handled it differently, but that's hindsight. I screwed it up and I own that. Some people insisted women should wear whatever they want, whenever they want. Look, I agree in principle, but life isn't that simple. Teenage boys don't just let things slide. If anything, they're usually the opposite. I was one. Even though I was an outcast, I still remember how guys talked and thought about girls based on how they dressed. To ignore that reality is naive. Growing up biracial, my mom prepared me for the world as it was, racism and all. Sure, in an ideal world, I wouldn't need to be told to brace myself, but the world isn't fair. Same for S and any woman. Ideally, yes, they should wear whatever they want, but the world is full of idiots and creeps and she needs to be prepared for that. Also, she wasn't just in something a little revealing. Realistically, she was wearing what you'd see on anyone embracing the full e-girl look downtown. It wasn't a tank top or spaghetti straps, it was that and more. A comment from a woman stood out: she learned to just punch anyone saying terrible things about her looks. That's honestly pretty reasonable, and if it comes up again, I'll jokingly assure S I've got her back if she goes full brawler mode. There was a lot of talk about me bailing at the first sign of conflict, but I absolutely did not run at the first sign of trouble. Everything went down over weeks, not days, and I kept trying to reconnect, to talk, to work it out. She just wasn't ready yet. I didn't know what more to do. Every time I tried to open a conversation, about the incident, about anything, it went nowhere. I gave her that space, but I never bailed. I saw people hung up on the fact that I bought her a car. It was never about manipulation, she doesn't even know about it, and honestly, she never will. It was a junker, nothing flashy, just something to get her places if I was going to back off and maybe move away. After our years together, I wanted to make sure she'd be okay. Another comment hit me right in the chest. Someone pointed out how I seem to be searching for a role now that S is 16, that I'd spent all those years as a sort of big brother or mentor and now I didn't know who I was supposed to be for her anymore. When I read that, I realize that's exactly what was going on. I've watched my role as a dad slowly shift from being the one who did everything with my kid to essentially just playing chauffeur since she became a teenager and got her own car. There's no real need for me to be around most of the time now. These days, all I really do is meal prep for her, I make lunches and drop them off, and we stick to our tradition of having dinner together once a week, something we all agreed on after she started driving herself everywhere. Before, we'd eat dinner together all the time, but now, aside from meals and supporting her at her athletic events, my presence has become optional. I feel like I've just become a close family friend. Maybe for better, maybe for worse. That doesn't mean I want to exit her life. I know some people might assume I'm searching for an easy escape, or that I feel trapped in this role. That's not true at all. I genuinely want to be involved in her life, but as she grows, there are simply fewer and fewer things I can do for her. I suppose this is what true empty nesters feel when their kids first leave home. The humor in people calling what I've been doing a tantrum isn't lost on me, but honestly, go fuck yourselves. Call it what you want, but that isn't what's happening. I'm pretty socially stunted, I'll admit. I thought since S is blunt, just like me, she'd be direct about what she was feeling. That's a point a lot of people seem to miss. Her behavior after our argument only reinforced my assumptions. Writing a letter might have been a stupid thing to do, I said as much even as I was writing it. But I really didn't want to put her through the emotional stress of a big, dramatic conversation, sitting her down and just asking, "Do you really hate me? Do I need to just leave?" It seemed easier, kinder, even, to just quietly step out of her way, the way I thought she wanted. I know it sounds idiotic, But my logic made perfect sense at the time. We fight, she says she doesn't want me around, I gradually reduce my presence, and eventually, I just disappear from her life. She expressed what she wanted, and I was going to deliver. Sure, she's a teenager. But I was never the rebellious sort. All through high school, I was the guy working out, studying, keeping to myself. I didn't have close friends. In my mind, if a teenager said something blunt like that, they meant it. And since S was raised a bit like me, I never doubted her sincerity. I wasn't trying to play some weird emotional manipulation game. My thought process is surface level because my emotions have always been pretty simple, and I assumed the same applied to S even now. I still see her as blunt and straightforward. Maybe not quite as much as I thought at first, but still far more than your average person. Up to this point, I had no reason to think otherwise. Frankly, my unfamiliarity with teenagers, or with girls and women in general, made it even harder for me to really grasp what was happening. People making the claim that I was consciously evaluating my position in the family mostly missed the mark. It wasn't something I was really thinking about. I just figured I was doing what S wanted. Maybe on some subconscious level I did consider that my role was done now that the car had been sorted, especially since I'm not blood, but that wasn't what was driving my decisions, if that makes any sense. Some of the jokes people have made about me, the ones that said he just had to write a fucking letter or he's just clueless as fuck, had me laughing harder than I care to admit. But there's one thing I want to set straight, to anyone defending my ex for cheating, just fuck off. If she'd wanted to break up because she thought I was emotionally distant, I would have understood, even though I've always been that way, and maybe she just hoped affection would change me. But cheating is a whole separate level. If you're done with a relationship, end it before starting a new one. It really does save everyone a lot of pain. I'm still bitter about it, maybe more than I let on, even if I don't express it directly to her. She might still be a good sister and mother otherwise, but I don't see her as a stand-up person. And for the record, this was never one of those don't tell the kids I cheated arrangements. S was 12 when we broke up, and we both knew that telling her about her mother's cheating would damage her relationship with her sister. At that time, we agreed to keep it quiet. If she ever brings up the topic again, I'll probably tell her the truth, provided she promises beforehand that nothing I say will affect how she feels about her sister, and I know it probably would, but putting that barrier in place makes it a little easier to talk honestly, and helps me avoid venting or painting her mother as a villain. So maybe this is just what life looks like as your child becomes an adult, feeling a bit useless, a bit left behind, but still loving and quietly finding ways to be present. Update 2. Things were going smoothly for about 3 weeks after S and I reconciled. We'd fallen back into our old rhythm. She'd text me random thoughts throughout the day, we kept our weekly dinners, and I'd still show up to her track meets when I could. It felt like we'd moved past everything, maybe even gotten closer because of it. Then last Tuesday, my ex called me around 9 p.m., which was unusual. She only ever called during emergencies or when something was seriously wrong. Her voice sounded strained when I picked up. Can you come over? S is. She's asking for you specifically, and I don't know what to do. I was there in 15 minutes. When I walked in, S was curled up on the couch with red, puffy eyes, clutching a box of tissues. My ex gestured toward the kitchen, so I followed her there. She broke up with that boy she's been seeing, Tyler, I think? She won't tell me what happened, just keeps saying she wants to talk to you about it. My ex looked exhausted. I tried, but she shut me down completely. Said I wouldn't understand. I felt that familiar knot in my stomach. S had mentioned Tyler a few times over the past couple months, but I'd gotten the impression it was just casual teenage dating stuff. Nothing serious. When I sat down next to her on the couch, she immediately leaned into me, the way she used to when she was little and had scraped her knee or failed a test. What happened, kiddo? She was quiet for a long moment, then, he was pressuring me. About. You know. And when I said I wasn't ready, he said maybe he should find someone who was. Her voice cracked. But that's not even the worst part. I waited. He said some really awful things about you. About why you're still around, about what kind of guy stays involved with his ex's little sister. She looked up at me, and I could see the anger mixed with hurt in her eyes. I defended you, obviously, but then he said maybe I had daddy issues or something sick like that. The protective rage that hit me was immediate and intense. I had to clench my fists to keep my voice steady. You know none of that is true, right? What we have, I know. She interrupted. That's what made me so angry. He was twisting something good into something gross, and I couldn't stand it. She wiped her nose. I told him he was disgusting and to never contact me again. I pulled her closer. I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. And for us. Are you sure you don't regret staying? She asked quietly, because people are always going to make assumptions. Tyler isn't the first person to say stuff like that. The question caught me off guard. What do you mean? Some of my friends think it's weird that you're still around. A few teachers have made comments about my father figure situation. Even at track meets, I can tell people are trying to figure out who you are to me. She sighed. Sometimes I wonder if it would be easier for you if you just moved on. We sat in silence for a while. I realized this was probably something she'd been thinking about for a long time, maybe even before our fight about the outfit. The weight of other people's judgment, the complexity of our unusual family dynamic, it was a lot for a 16-year-old to carry. Look at me. She did. I'm not going anywhere. I don't care what people think or say. You're important to me, end of story. She nodded, but I could tell something was still bothering her. The next few days were normal enough, but I noticed my ex seemed more distant when I'd stop by. Short responses, avoiding eye contact. Friday evening, she texted asking if I could come over after S went to bed. She wanted to talk. I knew this couldn't be good. When I got there, S was already upstairs, and my ex was pacing in the living room with a glass of wine that was clearly not her first. Sit down, she said, not looking at me. What's going on? She finally met my eyes. I've been thinking about what S told you the other night. About what that boy said, about what people think. She took a long sip. Maybe he wasn't entirely wrong. I felt like I'd been punched. Excuse me? Not about anything inappropriate, she said quickly. But about the situation being weird. About people not understanding. She set down her glass. I've been getting questions too. At work, at S's school events. People want to know who you are, why you're still so involved, and I don't always know how to explain it without it sounding strange. She ran her hands through her hair. Look, I'm grateful for everything you've done. You know that. But S is growing up, and maybe it's time we all acknowledge that this arrangement can't last forever. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe you should start pulling back gradually. Not disappearing overnight like you tried to do before, but scaling down your involvement. Let S adjust to having just me as her support system. I stared at her. Does S know you feel this way? No, and I don't want her to. This would crush her right now, especially after what happened with Tyler. She leaned forward. But think about it practically. She's going to graduate in 2 years, maybe go to college. You can't follow her through every stage of her life. At some point, she needs to learn to navigate relationships and challenges without having you as a safety net. That's not what this is. Isn't it? She gave me a look I couldn't quite read. When's the last time she came to me first with a problem? When's the last time she called me when she was upset? I didn't have an answer for that. I'm not trying to hurt you, she continued. But I think we created something that was supposed to be temporary, and now nobody knows how to let it evolve naturally. I left that night feeling more confused than I had in years. Part of me wondered if she was right, if I'd somehow overstepped boundaries I didn't even realize existed. But another part of me felt like she was asking me to abandon S all over again, just more slowly this time. The worst part? I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something my ex wasn't telling me. Some other reason she suddenly wanted me to step back. S hasn't noticed the tension yet, but she will soon. She's too perceptive not to. I have no idea what I'm supposed to do here. Update 3. I spent the weekend wrestling with what my ex had said, but by Monday morning, I decided to just keep things normal and see how they played out naturally. Maybe she was overthinking things, maybe I was. Either way, S didn't need to be caught in the middle of our uncertainty. That plan lasted exactly 3 days. Wednesday evening, I was at home when S called me, which wasn't unusual. But her voice was different, shaky, almost whispered. Can you pick me up? I'm at the park near school. What's wrong? Where's your car? It's at home. I walked here. Please just come get me. I found her sitting on a bench in the dark, arms wrapped around herself. When she got in my car, I could see she'd been crying again. What happened? She was quiet for a long moment. Mom and I had a fight. About what? About you. My stomach dropped. She told me she thinks you should start transitioning out of our lives. Her voice was bitter. Said people are starting to talk, that it's not healthy for me to be so dependent on someone who isn't family. I pulled over and turned to face her. What did you say? I told her she was being ridiculous. That you've been more of a father figure to me than anyone else ever has been. She wiped her eyes. Then she said something that really confused me. What? She said that's exactly the problem. That I've gotten too attached to someone who could just leave whenever he wants to. S looked at me directly. But then she said something else. She said she was worried about what people might think about a man my age spending so much time with a teenage girl who isn't his daughter. The implication hit me like a truck. You know that's not. I know, she said quickly. I told her that was disgusting to even suggest. But she kept pushing, saying that even if nothing inappropriate was happening, the optics were bad, that it could affect your job prospects, or my reputation, or... She trailed off. Or what? She said it could affect her custody if someone reported concerns to social services. We sat in silence. I realized this conversation had probably been building for a while, maybe even triggered by Tyler's comments. My ex wasn't just worried about appearances, she was worried about losing S entirely. There's something else, S said quietly. After we fought, I went to my room, and I could hear her on the phone with someone. I think it might have been Tyler's mom. What makes you think that? Because I heard her say I understand your concerns and maybe it would be better if they didn't spend so much time together. S's voice got smaller. What if Tyler told his mom about our fight? What if she's threatening to call CPS or something? The pieces started clicking together. My ex's sudden change of heart, her concern about other people's opinions, her insistence that I pull back. This wasn't just about natural boundaries. She was scared. Listen to me. Whatever's going on, we'll figure it out. But I need you to tell me everything Tyler said about me. Everything. She hesitated. He said you were probably grooming me. That guys don't just stick around to help raise kids unless they're getting something out of it. Her voice was barely audible. He said by the time I turned 18, you'd probably make a move. The rage I felt was unlike anything I'd experienced. Not just because of the accusation, but because I realized Tyler hadn't just said this to S, he'd probably said it to other people too. Maybe his parents, maybe mutual friends. Did you tell your sister what Tyler said specifically? No, I just said he was being gross about you. I didn't want to repeat the actual words, which meant my ex didn't know the full extent of what was being said, just that there were concerns floating around. She was probably panicking, trying to get ahead of a situation she didn't fully understand. When I dropped S off at home, I asked her not to mention our conversation to her sister yet. I needed to talk to my ex first, to understand exactly what kind of pressure she was under. The next evening, I showed up at their house after S had gone to her room. My ex answered the door looking exhausted. We need to talk, I said. She let me in, but her body language was tense. If this is about what S told you, it's about what you're not telling me. I sat down across from her. Someone contacted you, didn't they? Someone with concerns about my relationship with S. Her face went pale. How did you? It doesn't matter. What did they say exactly? She was quiet for a long moment. Then, Tyler's mother called me Tuesday night. She said her son had mentioned some concerning things about S's living situation. About an older man who wasn't related to her but was acting in a parental role. And? She said she wasn't trying to cause trouble, but that she felt obligated to express her concerns. She suggested that maybe the arrangement wasn't in S's best interest, developmentally speaking. My ex looked miserable. She also mentioned that other parents had noticed and were talking. What kind of talking? The kind that could end up with a social worker at my door asking questions I don't know how to answer. I understood now. This wasn't about my ex suddenly deciding our arrangement was unhealthy. This was about her trying to protect herself and S from a community that was starting to view our family dynamic as suspicious. What did you tell Tyler's mother? I told her that you were a family friend who'd been helping out, and that there was nothing inappropriate about the situation. But she kept asking questions, why you were still so involved after the breakup, whether there was adequate supervision, if I was aware of the potential risks of having an unrelated male authority figure so close to a teenage girl. The clinical way she repeated the woman's concerns made my skin crawl. And you think the solution is for me to disappear? I think the solution is for us to make changes before someone else forces them on us. She leaned forward. I can't lose her. If CPS gets involved, if there's even a hint of impropriety, they could remove her from my custody while they investigate. Even if they ultimately find nothing wrong, the damage would be done. I realized we were both trapped. If I stayed, we risked scrutiny that could destroy S's stability. If I left, I'd be abandoning her when she needed support the most, and probably confirming everyone's suspicions that there had been something inappropriate to hide. There's a third option, I said slowly. What? We get ahead of this. We document everything, we establish clear boundaries, and we make it impossible for anyone to question what's been happening here. She looked skeptical. How? I don't know yet. But I'm not going to let small-minded people destroy what we've built. S deserves better than that. What I didn't tell her was that I'd already decided what I needed to do first. I was going to have a conversation with Tyler's mother myself, because if she was spreading concerns about me based on her son's bitter assumptions, she needed to hear the truth directly. The question was whether that would make things better or much, much worse.